got it. Oh, and Ed's here. So are you going to put the prayers up, Dharma, or you want me to do it?
If you have them handy, let me open it up for you
Yeah.
and share. Welcome, everybody, to our weekly yoga philosophy and Gita study. And so happy to be here with you all. And Jagai is going to put the slide up with the prayers that we chant. So if you'd like to chant along, if you want to join regularly, we can send you these prayers or you can screenshot it while it's up.
Yeah, and the prayers, if you have your Gita, it's the beginning of the introduction to the Bhagavad Gita. Yeah, which I'm not sure is literally page 1, but might be. Let's see.
Page 1.
Page 1. So why don't we, as I think there's a few more people logging in, why don't we start the prayers and we'll go through and I'll say them and we'll just say them all. And you can look at them and read the translation. Is this little side here with your images? Do you see that?
They have the option of setting up the image of people. You guys can put it on, if you click on the top right button that says view.
Is it covering?
Side by side gallery, and then it should go on the side. If you don't want it there, just click side by side speaker.
So we'll go through and say all the prayers. And those of you who don't know, you can listen, you can read the translations as I'm saying them. This one specifically is essentially like all the gurus and teachers, but it's nice. So I'm going to read the Sanskrit all the way through and you can follow me if you know it out loud. Okay. Om Jnana Timur. You can see my screen, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Om Jnana Timirandasya Jnananjana Salakaya Chakshur Unmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhistam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadhamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Parakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raganatam Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Sabadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padam Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakam Vitamscha Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurhangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Brisabhanustute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vancha Kaupa Tarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasari Shri Gauda Bhakta Vrindam Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Nice. That's such a nice Mangalacharan. And for those of you who are going to read this introduction, when Srila Prabhupada came to America in 1967, he was very poor. He basically had a trunk full of books. And he was staying in a little office. And he put a little sign out in the window that said Bhagavad Gita classes. Prabhupada is the translator of this book and most of the books that I study. And he had nobody would show up for his class. Nobody, zero. And so somebody donated to him a tape recorder. So he would do classes anyways, even if nobody showed, and he would record them. So the very, very first recording that there is of Prabhupada speaking on anything is this introduction to the Bhagavad Gita. So basically, this, you can go to the database here. I'm sorry, you can go to Prabhupada. Rebecca's coming in. Prabhupada Vani is a place where all the recordings of Prabhupada have been transcribed. You can also listen to the recordings themselves. But you see the very first recording here is February 19th, 1966, and it's this Bhagavad Gita introduction. He goes through and says, Om, the whole thing. And then he speaks into the microphone and goes, Bhagavad Gita is also known as Gita Upanishad. And you can see that is the introduction to the Bhagavad Gita. Okay. So that's what that is. So today I wanted to continue with the Bhagavad Gita chapter 2. The last time we spoke, we talked about this verse, which was Natva evaham jatu nasam, natvamit neme janadipa, nacha na who is texting me? Na chaiva na bhavishyamaha sarve vayam ata param. And this verse was, never was there a time that I did not exist, nor you, nor all these kings, nor in the future shall any of us cease to be. And I was saying that Krishna is starting his argument with Sankhya. And if you remember, there were 3 parts to Sankhya. So I'd like that by the end of this class, we memorize the Sanskrit for what pratyaksha means, what anuman means, and what shabda means. And I was saying that that verse 2:12 was shabda. This is where Krishna is starting his argument by quoting the, who knows? I can't hear you, Dharma. You're
I think
quiet.
I quoted something from the Rig Veda.
Yes, he's quoting the Rig Veda. And just so I don't seem like I'm totally out of it, the let me look here, just so you don't think I'm totally insane. 4th century BC, a very old grammarian says that the Rig Veda can be understood in 3 ways: as Adiyagya, which is worship, as Adideva, the demigods, or Adi Atma, the soul. So Krishna is starting his first argument, which is called Shabda, by quoting. So let's look at this again. So we have 3 things, which is Sankhya. Pratyaksha, which means perception. Anuman, like the word Hanuman, which means inference. And we'll get into what that means. And then Shabda means quoting something. So let's all say this out loud. Pratyaksha,
Pratyaksha,
Anuman,
Anuman,
and Shabda.
Shabda.
Pratyaksha,
Pratyaksha,
Anuman,
Anuman,
Shabda.
Shabda.
Pratyaksha, Anuman, and Shabda.
Pratyaksha, Anuman, and Shabda.
Pratyaksha means perception. You've perceived it. You experience it, right? Like if you ride a terrifying ride and somebody says, how was the ride? You say, it was terrifying. And then they say, what's the proof? And you say, pratyaksha, I experienced it. It was terrifying. Okay, does that make sense? Remember the word, so pratyaksha. Anuman means inference, inference. This means like, for example, we use this in science. If let's say you give a mouse some kind of disease and it dies, you can infer that if a human gets that disease, it may also die. So you're learning something and you can infer it to something else. Does that make sense? You can, so Krishna in this next verse, he uses inference, which we'll get into that. And then Shabda means you quote the scripture. Like if you say, well, what's the proof of that there's soul is eternal? Then you may quote Bhagavad Gita. Well, Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, this, that, and the other thing. And in science, you may do the same thing. You would say, well, Albert Einstein says, and then you quote Albert Einstein. That's good enough. You don't have to prove Albert Einstein. You can just simply quote him. And so Krishna starts his arguments to Arjuna with Sankhya. And Sankhya is based on three things. What are those three things? Dharma.
Purusha and Prakriti, spirit and matter. Sankhya.
No, but I'm specifically talking about these three things.
Oh, these. The
Yeah.
Adyagya and Adidevata and Adyatman.
Pratyaksha, Anuman, and Shabda.
So
Means, yeah, the epistemology of Sankhya means how do you, so Sankhya going back means how do you know that something is true? Means you're like, what's the proof of it? And so Krishna starts like, and we started this last time because we were talking about the Yoga Sutras, which are primarily based on Sankhya, which means they're primarily based on logical or reasonable thoughts, not just faith. Does that make sense? Right? Like if I was a Christian or I wanted to become a Christian, I would say, how do I become a Christian? You have to accept an original sin. There's no proof of it. You have to accept that Jesus is saving you from it. That's not logical. It's not reasonable. It's faith. Sankhya is logic and reasoning without faith. It's not religious at all. It's just based on perception, pratyaksha, anuman, inference, and shabda, quoting from those who have philosophized about this beforehand. Does that make sense? Do we understand that? Chapter 2 of the Bhagavad Gita, I don't know if you can see me or not, but chapter 2 of the Bhagavad Gita is called Sankhya Yoga. And Patanjali Yoga Sutras are primarily based on Sankhya Yoga from the Bhagavad Gita.
Yeah.
Okay. So Sankhya is based on three proofs. And those are?
Pratyaksha, perception, or your direct experience, perceived experience.
Yes.
Anuman, when we have inference, or we can notice a pattern and make
Assumptions of something, yes.
Based on patterns that we've seen or things that we've seen. And Shabdya, when we can quote from other ancient wisdom traditions that have laid out things like this before.
Exactly. Perfect. So if you see somebody, try to swim across a lake and they drown, then you see another person try to swim across the same lake and they drown. Then a third person tries to swim across the lake, they drown. You can infer that if you try to swim across the lake, you're going to drown. You don't have proof of it, but you can infer that through your experience of seeing those people swim across the lake. So that's Anuman. Other ways to know, you can also think of it as like Hanuman, right? Same word, similar word. So who else can take a stab at Sankhya's three proofs? Max.
inference, perception, and I forget the last one.
Quoting those who've before us, like teachers.
Mike has a nice contribution. He's
Yes, Mike.
through the Yoga Sutras, chapter 1, verse 7, where Patanjali lays this out. He actually uses the same word, pratyaksha anuman gama pramanani. Right knowledge. He's talking about these 5 types of vrittis, movements in the mind or fluctuations in the mind, which one of is right knowledge, which consists of sense perception, logic, and verbal testimony.
Cool.
This is the
Nice.
Yaksha and Anuman also. So nice call, Mike.
So who else would like to take a stab at the 3 proofs of Sankhya?
Yeah.
Ed. If you can quote the Sanskrit of the name of them, that's great.
Okay. Pratyaksha, which is perception and experience, and then Anuman, which is inference, and just inference is kind of like reasoning and deductive reasoning, and then Shabdya for citing a spiritual text, quoting a spiritual text.
Excellent. You get a gold star and a smelly sticker. Who's next? Mike, you want to give it a try? What are the 3 proofs of Sankhya?
Pratyaksha, Anuman, and what I just Pratyaksha, Anuma, Gama. I'm trying to remember the verse now. What's the 3rd one in Sanskrit? I can't remember now. It just slipped my brain.
Shabda.
Shabda. Shabda or Shruti. The words of the, and wait, I think I heard Swami Satchidananda say it was the words of the awakened ones for the scripture, and I like that definition.
Yeah, you can also say Shruti. Shruti counts.
Shruti.
Good job. Gold star, smelly sticker. Virginie.
Yeah.
What are the 3 proofs of Sankhya?
So pratyaksha, which is perception and experience. Anuman, which is the inference of
Yes.
what we've experienced. So the 2 of them are quite interconnected because
Yes.
Anuman exists because of pratyaksha, and then shabda. Is it a P?
Shabda. Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Shabda, which is the reference or the quoting as a proof, intellectual and spiritual proof of what we've experienced and inferred.
Nice. Yes. Excellent. So if you, I don't know, if you read in your high school science book, the temperature of when water freezes, and you take water and you take it to that temperature, freezes, and you see it, you've quoted the book, you've done the experiment, and you've perceived it on your own, right? So Anuman can also be like an experiment, like you do it, you do the experiment of it, like you chant, like they say, chant Hare Krishna, you be happy. You chant Hare Krishna, so you're doing the work, you become happy. So Anuman can also mean like doing the experiment, or inference. Who else? There's a few people hiding in the back. Oh, I can't see so well.
Are you?
Oh,
Have their screens on. Matthew's here. If you want to ask
Matthew, want to give it a try, Matthew?
Sure. And I was giggling when Mike mentioned Swami Satchitananda. I was reading his translation of the Yoga Sutras. And from Yoga Sutra 1.7, it says, Prataksha, Anuman, Agaman, Pramanani. And it says the sources of right knowledge are direct perception, inference, and scriptural testimony.
Nice. Beautiful. So you've quoted a book to answer the question. You get 2 gold stars and a smelly sticker. Rebecca, are you there? Can you hear us?
Yeah, I'm here. I'm trying to fix the computer, but sorry I joined in late. I
No
was in a
problem.
meeting, but I'm happy to be here. Happy to see y'all.
Howdy, Bo.
Haribol.
Anybody with their cameras off would like to give it a try? I'm assuming that people with cameras off are like they're listening and driving and doing stuff or whatever.
Maybe. You're welcome to just unmute yourself and talk, or you are not required to as well.
Yeah, I went to go get coffee real quick.
Okay, that's good. Okay, so now that we've got this down pretty good, unless somebody wants to jump in and tell us about these 3 things, Pratyaksha, Anuman, and Shabda. Let us now go to, and I really wanted to kind of push that so we really have a good understanding of it, so that when we do our Gita verse, we can see where Krishna actually uses Sankhya. Not just the name of the chapter. Why is this chapter called Sankhya? So this first verse, never was there a time that I did not exist, nor you, nor all these kings, nor in the future shall any of us cease to be. So what we were talking about last time was, well, you can't perceive that, right? You can't infer it. Where is he getting this from? He's quoting Shabda, and he's quoting the Rig Veda specifically. Does that make sense?
Can I just add for our yoga teachers in
Yes.
Zoom room here that, if you miss the connection there, Jagai is breaking down Sankhya yoga and its philosophy of thought, like how it comes to its understandings. And we can see from the connection to the Yoga Sutra verse that Mike and both Matthew quoted, how the Patanjali's Yoga Sutra is also based in Sankhya philosophy, even though there's no chapters called Sankhya Yoga. But we can see that direct connection in the school of thought that Patanjali is using to approach the system of yoga.
Yeah. Nice. And so chapter 2 of the Bhagavad Gita, which starts Krishna's argument, which this verse right here starts Krishna's argument to Arjuna, why he should fight in the battle, is called Sankhya. So now the next verse, which this is the verse we can talk about today, Krishna says, so he first quotes Rig Veda, saying that the soul always existed. Adhyatma. Adi means original. Soul means it's forever or eternal, means there's no beginning. Something that's eternal has no beginning. And so this verse at 2:13, why don't we open our books and then we can start chanting the Sanskrit. I'll chant a line, you chant a line, I'll chant a line like that. And then we can read this translation. Does that work? And those that are listening, just absorb the nice sound vibration.
I did want to add to, like Dharma said,
Yeah.
there's no chapter in the sutra, in the Yoga Sutras about that specifically talks about Sankhya, but there is a section though in there that in the history of yoga that gives a kind of a good detailed description of the relationship between Sankhya and yoga. He calls it yoga and Sankhya.
Oh, nice.
In the Yoga Sutras, it's about a couple of pages of, that ties it together, and it makes sense what we're reading and talking about, and what he says there definitely shows that that there's a connection there.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, and that's in the Edwin Bryant translation, right? From this one.
That one, yeah, that's the one I have too.
It's Edwin Bryant's sort of extra commentary to support the arguments made in the Yoga Sutras or explain them, pulling from these Shad Darshans, these 6 schools of thought, yoga being one of them and Sankhya being another.
Nice.
It's good. Maybe if we have time, we could read through that section to see, what it reveals or brings out that relates to the conversation.
Nice. Okay.
You want to do the Sanskrit?
Yes. So let's open our Gitas to 2:13, or just look at your screen because I have it right here. So we'll do it line by line, then we'll do 2 lines by 2 lines, and then whoever wants to give it a try, give it a try. But this is a great verse, probably one of the top 20 most important verses in the Gita. Dehino sminyata dehe.
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 Komaram yovanam jara.
Komaram yovanam jara.
Komaram yovanam jara.
Komaram yovanam jara.
Tata dehantara praptir.
Tata dehantara praptir.
Tata dehantara praptir.
Tata dehantara praptir.
Diras tatra namuyati.
Diras tatra namuyati.
Diras tatra namuyati.
Diras tatra namuyati.
So I'll do it one more time through, but 2 lines. Dihino sminyata dehe, komaram yovanam jara.
Dehinosmin yata dehe komaram yovanam jara.
Tata dehantara praptir, diras tatra namuyati.
Tata dehantara praptir diras tatra namuyati.
Nice. Good work, Dharma. You want to give it a try?
I just did in front of everyone.
You want to lead it?
Line by line,
As you like, whatever's comfortable for you.
try the whole thing. Dehinosmin yata dehe komaram yovanam jara. Tata dehantara praptir diras tatra namuhuyati.
Nice. What a sadhu. Who's next? Max, you want to give it a try?
Yeah. I mean, I'm technically cheating because Virginia and I already know this verse from back in the day.
Oh, yeah, that's right. We memorized this one. Good.
A long time ago.
That's not cheating, that's called being educated and learned.
There you go.
Dehinosmin yata dehe komaram yovanam jara tatare hantara praptir diras tatra namuyati.
Nice. How nice. I completely forgot that we memorized this one. I don't think Dharma was there for that class. But I want to start memorizing verses again. We'll do a few classes and then we'll pick a verse and then we'll start memorizing. Okay. Anybody else want to jump in? I guess Virginie can, since she already knows the verse by heart.
Okay. Dehinosmin yata dehe kaumaram yovanam jara. Tata dehantara praptir diras tatra namuyati.
Nice.
I could go too.
Okay, go ahead, Rebecca.
Dehinashmi yata dehe kamaram yavanam jara tata dehantara prapti dirastrata namuyati.
Nice. Did you know that one by heart, or you just read it?
I just read it.
Oh, very good. You sung it so well. Anyone else? Mike? Give it a try.
Dehinosmin yatha dehe kaumaram yauvanam jara tatha dehantara praptir dhirastatra namuhyati.
Very good, very good. So many sadhus here. Anyone else want to hop in? Give it a try.
I'll try.
Okay.
Dehinosmin yata dehi kaumaram yavanam jara tatha dehantara pratir irastatra namuyati.
Very good, very good. Anyone else? Matthew? I'm just hitting everybody who's got their cameras on.
Okay. Dahinosmin yata dehi kaumaram yovanam jara tatta tahantra praptir dhiras tatra namuyati.
Nice. Very good. And there's Rebecca. Howdy, Bull. Fired up. Temple devotee. Okay, so let's read the translation, and then I really want to dig into the word for word because it's really nice and it has a lot of meaning to it. Gives us a lot of context to this Sankhya idea. So Krishna says, as the embodied soul, embodied means the soul within the body, passes in this body from boyhood to youth to old age, the soul similarly passes into another body at death. A sober person is not bewildered by such a change. Okay, so let's look at the Sanskrit and just pick out a few words. This word dehino and the word dehi, this means the body. And dehino means the person who's in, or the thing that's encaged in the body. So what's interesting is through the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna refers to the soul as dehino many times, but Krishna is never referred to as dehino. Krishna himself is not embodied. And this word means a person, a soul, which is forcibly in a body. Like you can kill yourself, I guess, but you're going to take up another body in another lifetime. You cannot stop this on your own. You can through the process of bhakti yoga and so many things, but you're encaged in a body. Does that make sense? This word dehino. Any questions on that? What does it mean to be embodied? It's a pretty big subject to think about it, that the soul is embodied kind of forcibly.
It sounds like we're imprisoned or we're encaged.
Yes.
And I know a lot of people struggle with that feeling of feeling imprisoned by this limited body that has things that are out of our control. Things are happening. We're inside it, and people, will use this language to talk about how they feel in their body, or they feel caged. And yeah, that's what it sounds like.
Flesh prison. Exactly. That's a good analogy. It's like that, right? And the body goes on without our control, like try not to sleep. It's impossible. Or how things work is like, watch my hand. I just willed it. I don't know how that happened. It just happened, right? Try to stop your heart. So many things happen that you cannot control. So you're encaged. And so Krishna starts this by saying, dehino, the encaged soul now in this body moves through different bodies, right? Like I have this picture here. This beautiful boy. That boy is gone. Gone. He's now an annoying 15-year-old. And should I, as a father, I have a picture and should I lament and cry over the loss of this boy. And then my teenager comes in and says, what's wrong with you? I'm lamenting the loss of my son. And he says, I'm right here. I'm like, no, you're not. This is him. Right? That would be a little weird. We would say that's weird. You may miss your babies, but you don't lament over them.
But people do. There are parents
Sure.
that can't let go of that image of their child or how they were and not allow that person to be their new self. This is, I think, a hard, to me, it sounds so simple and easy and logical, but I think because as an individual person, we're so identified with our body, it's hard to fathom, what do you mean my body has changed and I'm passing through multiple bodies when I'm in the same body and I'm still the same person? Like I was trying to explain this concept of rebirth and reincarnation, and like your body is reincarnating all the time. Like every 7 years you have all new cells, your child body, your teenager body, your adult, they're different different bodies. But because it was this person's body, that didn't make sense to them. But when you put it that way, like, am I lamenting over, but people do, they lament over that particular body shape or size or age because they're so identified with, that's me, that's the real me, that's the me I want to be.
Yeah. And you can ask people, how old are you? Like my mother, perfect example. No matter how old she is, she's 76. And you ask her how old she is. She says, I'm 21. Oh, you're not. You're 76. But she has a perception of that she's trying to keep being this youthful 21-year-old. But that's way gone. More than 50 years gone, that body. So Krishna starts with, so which would this be? This would be pratyaksha. He says, look, the body changes. You can experience it, you can see it, but the person remains the same. Right? So you perceive it. You're perceiving this change of body where the soul is the same. I'm the same. Sometimes I look in the mirror and I go, oh crap, I like aged. It happened without my perception until it hits me like, oh yeah, your hair is falling out, getting gray and getting kind of one of these things. And like, what the hell happened? You used to be all young and fit. Now you're getting old. So it's happening without even my own experience. And then I perceive it happening, right? So this little part here, and then we have komaram, I don't know, those of who are familiar with different names of Krishna, there's a name, Krishna Kumara, which means like a little young boy. Then there's Krishna Yovana, which is like a 13-year-old. So Kumara is like a young person, a young, like 6-year-old. Yovana is like a 13, 15-year-old. And Jara is an old person. So Dihino, the embodied, in this body, passes through youth, middle, teenage, and old age. We perceive it, pratyaksha. Any thoughts on that? No? And then dehantara means, and then as you've gone from jara to the next body, just as you're moving through this, you can move to the next. And so that is anuman, inference. We're inferring, we can see this body change. Now you can infer that at the end of this life, your body's going to go into another, your soul is going to go into another body. You can infer this. And that's where Krishna is coming up with this idea of starting off by saying, the body is changing with the soul. And at the end of this life, the soul goes into the next one. You can see the change in this life. So you can assume it's going to change into the next one. You have a body now, right? Like I have one now, means I received one and it's changing. At the end, I'll receive another one. So we have pratyaksha and what's the word?
Hanuman.
Anuman. Any thoughts so far before we continue to the third line? Dehantara means transference and prapti means to achieve. So you achieve a body at transference, means at death. Any comments, thoughts?
Here's one.
Yeah.
What if we're lucky enough to not transfer into another body?
Very good, very good. That's a very high elevated topic, which we'll get to through these chapters.
That's the goal, right?
That's the goal. Krishna says, and a little taste into the future of the Gita. Krishna says, Bahunam, many janma, births, ante, at the end of many births. So he's saying at the end of each body, you get another body. At the end of many bodies means when you're done with all this, Gyanavan, the person who has spiritual knowledge. Jnana means knowledge, vana means forest. So a forest of knowledge. They think Vasudeva Sarvam, and an et in quotes means that person thinks Vasudev is everything. Sa Mahatma Sadurlabha, that person is very, very rare. Why are they rare? Because they've gotten freed from the conditioning of this life, and it's their last life. So you're not going to see them again. Does that make sense? So yeah, coming soon, Max. Good question.
I think it's also good that, or not good, but it's what's the word I'm looking for? It's just like Krishna is creating this or putting into perspective what we hear a lot in yoga classes in different places, about there being, like that there's not the end all be all, is not the experiences of this physical body,
Yeah.
That there is a way to experience the moreness, the fullness of who, or I like to think of it as what we actually are.
Yeah.
As opposed to, just thinking like I'm just here and I'm not even really getting old. It's really just this body is developing as it's naturally supposed to do, like anything else. And I just happen to, because of all the other, reasons, have taken rebirth in this body to have this experience, to continue along the way on the journey of awakening and getting to that ultimate goal.
Nice comment. Thank you. Anybody else have any comments? I want to kind of get the comments of this part because we're going to move into the second part where Krishna says, dear us. So he's made this, he's quoted Rig Veda, said that the soul is eternal. Okay, cool. We all got that. We're going to start with that as our premise. Like when you do geometry, you say something is given, and that given sets up the rest of your mathematics. Without that given, you can't do anything. The angle is 90 degrees. From there, you can do lots of things. But without that given, you can't start anywhere. So Krishna quotes the Rig Veda, says, the soul is eternal. It never was born, will never die. Next step, the body changes around the soul as it moves through time. And at the end of this body, it attains a new body and keeps that cycle going. So you shouldn't lament the body's changing. and you shouldn't lament the transference. Okay, what?
So I was gonna say too, like with the inferential part about this is like when you like if I had a personal experience with multiple bodies, I could make that inference. But my inference at this point really is because I can see other people who are I can see babies, I can see boys, I can see teenagers, women, different ages and stages, right? I see all those people externally to me. I see myself, aging and developing, but I don't have necessarily a strong perception of me before. So
Yeah.
the body that I was in before to kind of to say, oh yeah, I can remember when I was in this other body and I was doing this other thing and living this other kind of life. It just made me. I just thought
So
about
that's
that, right?
where, yeah, exactly. So that's where Shabda and Anuman come in, because you can't always perceive it all. So you can quote the previous the acharyas, the teachers in the past, and you can make an inference, but you can't perceive it yet. You can just infer that it's going to happen, but you can't perceive it. Otherwise, the only way you could perceive it is you're dead, and then you take a birth again, but then you forget because your memories are stored in the other body, which is now gone. So, you can infer it, but you can't obviously perceive the previous life. Some people say that they can, and so this is a bit of a deeper topic, and Krishna will get into this. You don't carry memories with you into the next life, but you carry what's called sangskaras. And sangskaras almost literally translates to scars, like cuts. And so like a kara, anyways, don't get into that. And so you carry with you in the next life impressions. Sometimes those impressions can be so strong that you actually have some detailed memory, but in general, not. And so that's why we have different personalities, different desires, different fears, different interests, because of impressions from previous lives and desires that we carry into this life. I mean, I have raised 3 kids exactly the same, no difference. Even the same stuff, they even wear all the same clothes. And they're the 3 most different people I could imagine. So where does those differences come from? Sangskaras from previous lives. That makes sense? Yeah.
This is another way we can have a possible inference, because what Ed was saying is essentially that our ability to have inference in this particular situation is limited.
Yeah.
Right? We cannot necessarily remember past lives, but when we now talk about a concept of samskaras, referring to maybe some, awakened ones who talk about samskaras, to say we bring these things in and we understand our patterns and why we have certain aversions and desires. It's another way that we can expand that inference of information, even though it's still not a solid inference that we can totally sink our teeth into.
Yes, you can't get 100%, but one important point, which was really strong with Greek philosophers, is that you have a body now. Now, to stop and think about that, you received a body, you've achieved one, and you don't know how. You have no ability to know how you are now in this body now. But you do have to credit the philosophy in saying that you have a body. So if I am a conscious thing that passes through a body, and I have a body, though I don't know how I got it, I can make inference that as I end this body, now the body's gone, I will get another body because I have one now. You see? So
in a religion household that says you only get one life.
Yeah,
That's
that's
the philosophy here, and that's I think one of the vast differences between many Christian faiths and
yes.
Eastern wisdom traditions that believe in reincarnation. Like the fact that you have a body now alludes to the fact that you you can get another body.
Yes. There was Buddha was walking with his disciples and saw the ocean. And he said, "That's how much breast milk you have drank in all your lives put together." You think, "Pfft." And then what was the other one? There was another one similar to that. Saw a mountain and said it was like, that's how many fingernail clippings you've had. And, you know, so it's just, it's a lot. Anybody else want to comment on this concept? This is the very beginnings of, and again, for those who are are new or they're just following and didn't get the blessing to be with us for the past 2 years. The Bhagavad Gita is a distillation, a summary of all the Vedic teachings, hundreds of Vedic literature put together into one 700 verse conversation between Krishna and Arjuna. So really terse philosophical points will come in sometimes in 2 lines and move on to other things. So Krishna is just throwing right in by saying the soul is eternal, Rig Veda. The soul passes through one body as the body changes. And then now you get the next body. In some ways, he's not convincing Arjuna. Arjuna already knows this because Arjuna is a very learned philosopher of the Vedic teachings. He's just kind of like, right, you know, the soul and this, like he's just kind of giving him a quick recap to get them on the right in the right line so they can go on down the path, which takes them through the different yogas and eventually to bhakti yoga. Any other thoughts? Rebecca or Virginie, Mike, Azriel, are you there?
She's there. She's got her video on waving hi at you.
She's there.
Hey, Jogaiji, I have one little
Yeah.
nugget to ask for help with. I don't know which verse this came from, but just that our all of our acts, you know, all this knowledge that we're gaining, and you know, it doesn't disappear. You know, like when we pass away, we kind of start off where we left off, and
Yeah.
I found that to be very inspiring. So, could you help us find that that verse of the Gita? I just found it so inspiring when you shared it.
There's no diminution. There's no loss or diminution on the spiritual path.
Yeah.
That verse.
So here's what I do a lot because I have a bad memory. I do Gita, no loss or there it is. Diminution. And then it's 240.
In the same chapter we're on right now.
Chapter and go here. Oh, I was already in chapter 2. 240. Here. In this endeavor, there is no loss or diminution. Diminution means loss would mean completely lost. Diminution means backtracking. And a little advancement on this path can protect one from the most dangerous type of fear. And those scholars out there, what is the most dangerous type of fear? To not take birth as a human again.
The fear is that we're going to come back. That we are going to.
The fear is that we're not going to come back as a human.
Oh, that is art. You're saying that is the most dangerous type of fear is when we are not
To
afraid.
not come back as a human, so that we have lost the gift of reason and philosophy and bhakti and devotion and such.
We're so attached and clinging to life that we want to take birth again. Like when people say things like, in my next life, I want to be born
Yeah.
as such and such. That's the most dangerous type of fear. The attachment to not coming back as something else.
The attachment, no, the most dangerous type of fear is to take birth as anything but a human.
Oh, so to devolve in our,
Yeah, evolve. Yeah, that's right.
like, again, people say, the next life I'm going to come back as a dog so I can just.
Yeah, that's not good. So we've been granted, Krishna talks about this in the Bhagavad Gita, but we get from our karma and our desires, and Krishna says, an eye, ears, nose, body, senses, to be able to move forward. The human is a gift where we're not very good at fighting, we can't spin webs from our butt, we can't fly in the sky, we can't bite things, our skin isn't very thick, but we can reason and we can talk and we can philosophize to the point where we can infer and experience the super consciousness, not just our own consciousness, but a super consciousness, something outside of ourselves, right? And so that is a gift of being a human. So this means that if you take up even a small bit of spirituality, you will not go back to being a lower thing, because you have to be given a body to be able to continue your spiritual practice, which is only the human and on up. Does that make sense? Yeah? Oh, hands up. Yes, Ashriel, please ask.
Hi.
Hi.
So I wanted to touch on a little bit of what Matthew shared. I'm not too far into the Gita. I think I'm on about to start chapter 7, but one verse that really struck me that kind of goes along the lines of what Matthew was mentioning is 6.44. This one kind of stuck with me. It says, by virtue of the divine consciousness of his previous life, he automatically becomes attracted to the yogic principles, even without seeking them. Such an inquisitive transcendentalist stands always above the ritualistic principles of the scriptures. So that kind of reminded me of what you were saying about how we kind of remember the lives that we had before and we kind of pick up where we left off. And that was actually really comforting for me, because as I'm learning all of this stuff, I feel like, I don't know, I'm always asking like, oh my God, am I supported? Oh my God, like just very inquisitive and asking a lot of questions. So this gave me a lot of comfort to know that as I'm learning more about this path, that somehow I got brought back into this from before, I guess, my past life.
Yeah, almost guaranteed. Obviously, I don't know for a fact, but almost guaranteed that, especially being young, if you're young and you're inquisitive in spirituality, it's from previous life. Very rare. You'll see as you go, very, very rare that you find somebody who has a full lifetime of materialism and then they become inquisitive. It's much, much more common. Almost everybody that I've ever met, they start off young. It hits them as a teenager. Bam, what's this? What's going on? I want to know. And then they move forward, because obviously you have to have developed a certain amount point to be able to get your abilities to reason. You can't reason at 1 year old, just like you can't walk at 1 year old, but you have the innate ability to do it. It just has to develop. And then once it gets to that point, then it kicks in. So I'm so happy you quoted that. How good. Quoting verses, Shabda. You are a smriti, a person who's remembering the Shastra and now quoting it. How nice.
Well, not all of them, but that one stuck with me.
Okay, well, that's important. And that is the entire purpose of studying these books, is that it gives you a tool set, not just a material tool set, a spiritual tool set. So when things come up, your brain now can go to that shelf, that verse, and pull it out, say, oh yeah, this. And I've also heard, which I love this reference, that if you want to talk to God, you have to give God a voice. And the voice of God is the scriptures and the philosophy. So the more you put in, the more you can have that conversation. So good for you. High five. Matthew, you got your hand up?
Yeah, this reminds me of the story that was shared in the Srimad Bhagavatam of the two, were they brothers, I believe, Nala Kuvara and Mani Griva, the two brothers that were turned into trees. They were cursed by Narda. So they were embodied as humans, but then they were turned into trees as they were cursed in their next life, and they embodied these trees. I forget for how long, for a long time. Is it 1,000 years? I don't remember.
Very long time.
And then Krishna stumbled upon them, and he blessed them and was able to transform them. So they just had to go through that process of burning off that karma from that previous life. And although they were humans and they did do some misdeeds, Krishna had a bigger plan for them. So even because they degressed, they had no idea what would happen through being purified as embodying trees.
Yeah, good quote. Great story. That's this picture here.
And those are the souls that are stuck in the trees when Dhammadarastakam Leela happens, right? When he gets bound to the big mortar, and his mom thinks she's put him in his place, and then he takes running off with this thing tied to him. And he runs right through these two trees and knocks them over. And then these spirits are released and liberated through that pastime.
Yes. Very good. Good quoting. Quoting Bhagavatam stories, Damodar Astakam, Bhagavad Gita, some Bhakti Shastris here.
Mm-hmm.
How nice. How nice. Anything else, or should we go to the next part while we have 20 more minutes? Any other questions or thoughts about this? We're kind of going into a new little section here that I wanted to bring up, which is an important part of the Bhagavad Gita. So if not, so now Krishna gives this argument. He says, I quoted the Rig Veda, the soul is eternal, the body changes. You can infer that at the end of this life, it goes into the next one. You shouldn't lament the change of the body in this life, and you shouldn't lament the change of the body from this one to the next one. But then what's interesting is Krishna says, Dhiras tatra namuyati, that a sober person is not bewildered by such a change. Why didn't he say a knowledgeable person is not bewildered? Why didn't he say a yogi is not bewildered? Why particularly did he say a sober person? Dhiras. He is assuming that Arjuna is going to make the next question, which is, okay, cool. If the body changes, I'm not going to freak out. At the time of death, you get a new body, great. But I'm attached to the association of those people now. I don't want to lose their association, whether their body changes or not. I don't want to lose them. Does that make sense? So Krishna, right? Huh?
Well, because then Krishna would have to, well, so Krishna's like cutting him off at the past and saying like, don't get all intoxicated on your, mental speculations and feelings to things that are temporary.
Exactly. And so he says, dear us, sober person. And then the next verse, he defines sober by saying, the non-permanent appearance of happiness and distress. So what does it mean to be sober? The non-permanent appearance of happiness and distress means happiness comes, happiness goes. Distress comes, distress goes. Happiness, distress. And their disappearance in due course is like inference, the disappearance and appearance of winter and summer seasons. They arise from your sense perceptions. Means, yay, the summer's here. I hate the winter. Or I love the winter. I was born in Alaska. I hate the heat of the summer. Either way that's coming, the weather will be the same. It's now you that is making the like intensity of the situation. So a sober person is not bewildered by these two things. So yes, we will miss grandfather Bhishma, who he's really Arjuna's freaking out because he has to fight his grandfather who raised him. Yes, we will all miss grandfather Bhishma, but in time, that feeling will go. Just as in time, you will change and other things will change. So it's much more like the kind of the Buddhist idea of being in the moment, but detached from the greater. So we appreciate grandfather Bhishma. We love grandfather Bhishma and we will miss him. But in time, that suffering will go. So that's why Krishna says, dear us, not knowledgeable, not philosophical, but sober. And that sobriety is him kind of stopping Arjuna to say, but wait a second, oh, okay. Yeah.
I think of like when somebody close to you passes away or somebody dies, and we often use that phrase, it's very sobering.
Yes.
Like it gives us a sense of clear perception that we normally don't have when we're lost in the minutia of life, just the mundane stuff. We're kind of, we could say, intoxicated on just the experience of life. And so we forget and we're not clear because we're now getting hooked into what's happening here. So sober is a clear-minded person, because you can have the knowledge and not be clear-minded, which I'm sure we've all experienced. Like, I know I shouldn't feel this way. I know I shouldn't be doing these things that I'm doing, but I'm not sober enough in my mind, clear enough in my mind to detach in a way that would be healthy for me here.
Yeah. 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 So same as like back to this analogy. I could be very distraught of the loss of my 1-year-old boy. It was not going to come back. So what if I just was endlessly crying over it? Days and weeks and months and years crying over my 1-year-old. Everybody else, including him, who's 15, would think I had problems. So I'm sober. I have sobriety. I realize it changes, and now you're here now. So I accept now, and soon you're going to get old, and I'm going to get old, and things will change. And so I become situated, stable, and sober. Dheeras also means situated, like unshaken. Matthew, you had a question?
It just reminded me of all the devotees of Krishna. When Krishna is home in Vrindavan, they're so happy, but they're also going to be so sad when he leaves, or like they'll cry at the thought of him leaving. And I think of like being in that position of being around someone, who like just makes you feel so much joy, and then they leave, like thinking about Jagai, you and your young boy. It's so heartwarming being around like a young kid. They have so much love to share. And I think about my own little brother, And I still think of him, he's 18 now, but I think of him when he was like 5, and like, I really miss like being around that 5-year-old Nicholas, because he was just so like so beautiful and just so lovely. But I'm just not sober enough to be able to detach myself from that.
Yeah, but it's also, you know, we're also only in a couple of verses into it. As time goes on, we realize that it's sobriety is a deeper understanding, a deeper situation. It doesn't mean that, I don't know, if one of us passed away, we wouldn't lament, right? Of course we would lament, but we have a deeper foundational situation which carries us through it, coming from philosophy, experience, spirituality, realization. And then with that, we still have human feelings. When grandfather Bhishma passed away, everybody sat next to him and cried, and they were full of tears. Even Krishna did. But there's this, but it doesn't mean like Arjuna wants to not do his job, right? He's like too far off. He doesn't want to do anything. But no, you're responsible. You have to do your job. I'm a father to my 15-year-old who once was a cute 1-year-old. I can't ignore him because I'm lamenting the loss of my 1-year-old, right?
I think it's important to distinguish, you know, because in the next verse he says, you are going to experience happiness and distress.
Yeah.
It's part of your experience, but the goal is to not be intoxicated on those feelings, like where they take over you and you now don't have control. That's how we understand intoxication, right? Where, and the word sober and sobriety is like when we are able to be in control and those things don't take over so much that we are, you know, we're not sober, we're just drowning in those feelings. So I think it's important to note that, you know, it's not about not feeling, it is just not being taken over by those feelings to the extent where you can't think clearly anymore.
Yeah, exactly. Great point. Krishna does not say sober people do not experience happiness and distress, right? He says you experience it, but you know that it comes and goes, both. And in the world we live in now, people only want happiness, only. They
And
just want that. That's it.
high intoxicating happiness.
Yeah.
You can't just
High, hardcore, crank it to 11, 24/7, YOLO, freak out. Like, and it's just, it's not real life. Then when it goes down, oh my God.
because it will inevitably, that is the
Yeah.
flow of life, right? And
Yeah. I have
those
a token, which I've told this story before. My wallet came from my stepfather who commits suicide about 10 years ago. And before he commits suicide, now this is a man who made $3-4 million a year as a lawyer, so wealthy. My God, his house and all this clubs and all this stuff. But because they changed some laws in California, instead of making 3-4 million, he now could only make like a million, million and a half. And he was so distressed by it. He called me on the phone a few times, so distressed. And that distress, it drove him to suicide. He directly killed himself because he could not make the same amount of money he was making before. Like, to get into more detail, he went to this exclusive club that you had to pay $100,000 to just be part of. And then in the club, there was like a more of an exclusive club, which was really expensive. Like you had to pay like $500,000 to be in it. And he couldn't afford anymore the internal exclusive club. And it just drove him so crazy. He killed himself. Really? But that's because his needs and desires were so high that making a few $1,000,000 was like crap.
To Dharma's point too about like control, it's really sobering to me is coming to the realization that I'm actually not in control. And control is kind of is an illusion that we think that we have when we, kind of moderating things. But when I have that realization, it's for me, it's very sobering. Doesn't mean that I don't do anything, or I'm just like, well, it's not in my control. I can't do anything, and not, take any action. But it's just like that understanding that body's changing. I can't control the body not changing. No matter what I do, no matter what kind of things I try to do, it's gonna change.
Nice.
And then with external circumstances as well, some things we can have an influence or input, but it's really not control like that, so to speak.
Nice.
We have 10 more minutes. It would be nice if everybody, specifically those who have their cameras on or participating, can just turn your mic on and give a few minutes of what your thoughts, your revelations of what we talked about, your feelings, this, that. Who would like to go first? Dharma, you're the leader of our group. Why don't you go first?
Virginie raised her hands.
Oh, Virginie first then.
Yeah, I just actually wanted to look back to last week, and the takeaway I had from last week was like that finding peace with what is, instead of being lost in frustration and all that. It was what you said, Dharma, about that. And I feel like this impermanence and the sober person is finding peace with what is, and not trying to fight aging or the loss of happiness or the weather or all that. So yeah, it's about being mindful and aware and present, and trusting the universe.
Nice.
Thanks for bringing that back up, that concept of making peace with what is, what a sober person does.
Yeah.
An intoxicated person, someone who's intoxicated on their ego or intoxicated with their attachments. And I think of intoxication just means there is an overflow to the point where it is now become toxic.
Yeah.
So thank you for that point. It's good. Rebecca, you had your hand up too.
I was stretching, but I'll go. I'll get it. I really like this verse because it really is the basis of a lot of the Bhagavad Gita. And I think it's really comforting knowing that we come again. And then even if this material body dies, our soul is eternal. So that's always kind of nice, because it kind of lets you just surrender to death. And I think, though, the most important is, like we talked about, the responsibility we have as human beings, because we are allowed to use this life for spiritual realization. And to know that time keeps moving and our body is temporary. So we do have the responsibility as humans to use that for spiritual realization. And if we would like to teach others that as well. So I really like that part of it. Again, remembering that we have a responsibility to help others in this life. Haribo.
Oh, so maybe after everybody's spoken something, maybe Rebecca, you can give us 5-10 minutes about your new life at the Hare Krishna temple in Hawaii, since nobody's talked to you since you've moved in.
I talked to Jenna once.
You haven't been here in the group.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, so just think what you're going to say, and let's go everybody else. Who else would like to say something? Mike, what's your thoughts about so far our study?
I've just been kind of thinking about like the limits of this body. Like there's a certain karma and there's a certain dharma that this body is here for, and we didn't really choose it per se. And I've just been kind of thinking about, like, are we really in control of the happiness or misery that comes to us, or is there a certain amount of happiness and misery that's just kind of meant to come to us based on our body and the bodies we chose and in the time we chose and the life we chose? And just kind of like, just really kind of thinking about that a lot, just thinking like, who's actually in control of my happiness? Like I can do a thing outside that makes me happy, or I could do a thing that makes me miserable, but it's like, do I really control the misery or the happiness that just comes to me based on my body, based on my birth?
Mm-hmm. Nice. Yeah. I think like that too. I was in a meeting. My office business is starting to make us come into the office, and they're talking about promotions and this, that. And at some point I spoke out and said, honestly, the CEO types were born like that. I'm born like this. And my boss actually agreed. She said, yeah, you're right. Those kind of people, that's how they're born and driven like that. There's nothing I'm going to do to then become the CEO of my company. It's an internal desire that works its way out, right?
Yeah, in the same way, I'm definitely not going to be a CEO. I just
Yeah.
know I know that about myself, and I know that consciousness that I don't have that will make me a CEO.
Yeah. Nice, nice, nice revelations. Matthew, you have something you want to add?
I, hmm, I guess we can all try our best to be, the CEOs of our own lives, even though, we're not going to be like the highest person in control, but we can all try our best to do the works that we feel are worthy. And I think a lot of the stuff that we read, I'm always just so grateful for reading any of these verses, because it just is so grounding to see this stuff. And I'm super appreciative of this group and to be able to be reminded. So thank you.
Nice. Max? Oh, go ahead.
I had one more question just to continue something I asked from before. What were some of those stories or some of those examples of some of the Krishna Lila of his devotees in Vrindavan who were just like lamenting over Krishna leaving? Because I think that's what I was really thinking about. Like, man, if you really met Krishna in real life, and like I would be so distraught if, like just so blown away if I saw Krishna in his full form, just like it's described, right? Like Mother Yashoda looking down into Krishna's mouth and seeing the entire universe. But why were the gopis, or when was that described? Like when they were just so distraught? Like was that like when Krishna was planning on leaving Vrindavan, or like they knew he was going to be leaving?
So Kamsa, who was the king of Mathura, had this premonition that Krishna was going to kill him. And he was so materialistic, he was always trying to find Krishna to kill Krishna. So Krishna, even though he was engaged in his life and his play in Vrindavan, there was always this overlooming threat of Kamsa. So at some point, the kind of ministers of Mathura said, we just need to bring Krishna here and just let this happen. So Kamsa said, well, I've heard that Krishna and Balaram were great wrestlers. Why don't we have a challenge where we challenge Krishna and Balaram to a wrestling match here in Mathura as like an arena, but the wrestlers will be these big dudes and they'll just pound them to death. So they sent Akrura, who was Krishna's uncle, to take Krishna back to Mathura. This was the first time that the residents of Vrindavan ever even considered that Krishna would leave. It was never a consideration that Krishna would leave. And when they saw Akrura show up, it's described as similar to like if you saw the Grim Reaper. They realized, oh my God, what the hell? And like terror in their hearts. The gopis were so overwhelmed that they tried to stop it by laying in front of the cart. And there's a very beautiful prayers about Krishna leaving Vrindavan in the Bhagavatam. But that was the first time. And there's a lot of this, the whole 10th canto is this kind of coming and going and bringing Krishna together. And I heard something interesting, and then I'll let everybody talk because I do want to hear Rebecca. And Max is packing up. Max, why don't you say your thing before you leave? What's your thoughts?
My thought that I wanted to share is I was thinking about how unnatural it is for a human or an animal to be trapped in a cage, and then for our souls to be embodied. We are born into a state of suffering because what brings us pleasure is all temporary. And so if we can agree that there's this energetic thing that is encapsulated in this physical experience, then of course it's going to feel at times like the energy just can't pass through. And I'm not articulating it quite as well, like it's not pointed, but y'all get where my head is. Thanks for letting me share that.
Thank you.
That's very clear. I think that as we're by nature, we are expansive and liberated and free and beyond, right? And unlimited. But we are in a body that makes us experience limitations and temporariness and that feeling of trappedness, which goes against the grain of what we inherently are as souls. Yeah. That's great.
Nice.
Joining us, Max.
Ashrial, you have something you want to add? Give us your revelation. I see you've gone off camera though.
I enjoy that the Gita is starting off with this like, I don't know, just this question of life and death and what life is here in this body. And then I feel like with these conversations, I'm starting to understand that beginning part a lot more and wrap my head around that argument. So I really appreciate everyone sharing and this conversation. It can feel kind of heavy at times. So I really appreciate that you guys are putting this together.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you. Anybody else sitting in the back with their cameras off want to come on and give a few minutes or a moment of what their thoughts are? No? Okay. Anybody else? I'd like to hear Rebecca give us her update. Since the last time she's been on, she's moved to Hawaii, moved into the Brahmacharini ashram, is doing service, and is super fired up. Ki Jai, Bliss, Hari Bol. So you're on mute though. Tell us your temple experience.
I wake up at 4 a.m. every single day. And we go to Mangalarti, and then we chant our rounds. I like to chant my rounds in Prabhupada's room because it's really nice doing that. And then we have Guru Puja. And so we greet the deities. And then we have this breakfast. I like to call it breakfast because we get so much food in the morning. And they're really nice to me here because I'm vegan. And they started making vegan things for me. And they don't make fun of me or anything, which I think is really nice. And then, and then we do our service. I'm the assistant of the president, which is really cool.
Nice. So you get association with Kusha all day.
Yeah. It's really nice. I'm learning a lot from her. And then I do my service. I also do flower garlands, or I help clean the temple, do the usual things. And then we have our day off.
Nice.
So it's pretty chill, pretty nice.
Good. So you're happy and you're chanting 16 rounds.
Yeah.
Wow, fired up.
Yeah. We have nectar devotion classes, which is nice. We have a Maharaj, a sannyasi living with us, which is really cool.
Oh, who is it? What's his name?
B.A. Ashram Maharaj.
Oh.
He has a whole full name, but I don't really know how to pronounce it yet.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. Pretty good. Hawaii's cool. I'm just doing a lot of projects and doing outreach with young people, which is kind of difficult here a little bit, but trying my best. I have to be very innovative because I can't do outreach like how I was doing it back in LA.
Nice. Yay.
Yes, thank you. Thank you guys for listening to my to my day.
How ecstatic. That's amazing. Many times I'll be reading and I'll read a verse or something and I'll go, oh, I know this. How do I know this? And then I'll remember, oh, I memorized this when I was a brahmachari. So, the things that you remember, the things that you read, though they get buried, they'll come back later.
Yeah, it's a lot. It's like a roller coaster,
Yeah.
Like you're with a family because you see them every day. You're like, you got your uncle and your mom and your dad and your brothers and sisters in a way. And, we kind of get on each other's nerves, but in a loving, transcendental way, because, we're all living together. So it's like Krishna University again.
Yeah,
But
nice.
I'm getting now, yeah.
Okay, so Mike left and Azrael says, what's the outreach for?
Outreach is pretty much bringing Krishna consciousness to new people in a way where it's kind of strategically, because not everyone is.
It's not just like out preaching.
Open to, yeah. So it's like it's like strategic preaching in a way. And I was doing that in LA with the college universities or with Mantra House and everything. And so I'm doing that here in Hawaii. So
nice. Good for you.
What I want to do.
Nice.
Yeah.
Anybody else, Dharma, you want to give us your concluding words and then we can.
I think this was a great class. So good to hear from you, Rebecca. And get an update. We're all missing you here. And I'm just gonna focus this week on not getting too intoxicated on the happiness or the stress that comes my way. And stay as sober as I can. KP says, thank you all for allowing me to listen in on the discussion while I was on the road to San Diego. The discussion was interesting. It made me think about how our current society sees death as an end-all be-all. I feel like death should be viewed as an opportunity for a new beginning. It has also helped me reflect on how I deal with loss. And she hopes to be here for the next one. It's a great takeaway.
Nice.
Wonderful. Awesome. Well, I got to close it out and say goodbye to my kids before they leave. But thank you all for being here.
Vancha kalpatarubhyascha kripa sindhubhya evacha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Thank you very much. I'm very blessed. We will see you next Thursday at 1:30. Haribol.